and we're going to talk about what they're doing, how they're making decisions. Let's, so they're not nervous. I see Danielle. Oh, there they go. Let's give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as they come on stage. You guys are my last one. I'm like super excited.
Does that mean you're going to go
I can relax. Well, it's the time zone.
Got a day's worth of content to fire at us.
Well, I start with the brekkie and then finish with this, and it's like midnight my time. But I'm super excited to hear from you guys. Like, we just chatted, obviously, to the agencies, and we put their feet to the fire on some important topics. How do you feel when you see the press, you see all the news about the agencies, clients don't trust them, there's principal media trading? Does that reflect reality from? Because interestingly, by the way, it was the agencies that got you guys involved today. So you can't have that much of a bad relationship with them. But do you think it reflects reality from your position?
Do you want to take that?
So from my perspective, I'm in a real, I'd say, privileged, nuanced position because we're the client and the seller inside our agency relationship. So from our perspective, the way that we work with PhD is not, I think we're probably looking for different things out of them than potentially what a more traditional client-agency relationship is looking for. We're really interested in the landscape. We're asking lots of questions about what's happening more broadly, globally, really trying to keep our finger on the pulse around what's happening outside of this market. We're also really interested in getting information from them that helps fuel other parts of the business as well that need more education about what's happening,
So you think with all the craziness going on, all the fragmentation, there actually should be more valuable partners to you?
I think that agencies play a huge, agencies have a really strategic value for us in navigating our new world order, and I think we can get, and you hear it here in this room, that we get really caught up on, the three networks, but truth be told, we haven't actually looked at the three networks in over 2 years from a competitive landscape perspective. They're not the ones who are making inroads into our revenue and audience. So, we rely really heavily on our agency to give us that foresight and understanding around how those competitors are selling into them and what's the story that they're taking into the agency to try and get more money.
Yeah, and Danielle, it's interesting, when we chatted, you have shitloads on your plate, don't you, and what you look after.
Busy.
Yeah, it's busy. As a CMO, how much do you actually spend on the sort of the media side?
I think the role of a CMO, particularly in a bank like ING, is you become increasingly a generalist. My scope spans brand, sponsorships, corporate affairs, product customer marketing, digital performance, marketing technology. So, the morning commute to work is busy, trying to keep up with, trends, insights, team, business. We're a local subsidiary of a global mothership in Amsterdam. So I think, for me, that means you've got to hire excellent people around you. You asked me what I thought about, principal-based media, and I was like, honestly, I've got no fucking idea.
So it doesn't,
we've got
it doesn't reach
teams,
you?
No.
That stuff doesn't reach you?
Well, like Cody said, it's not real. Certainly not, in
If
our
you don't know
contracts.
about it, it doesn't exist.
But
Exactly.
I also think it's down to, are you asking the agency the right questions? Are you scrutinising the recommendations? I think, potentially there's a level of complacency in how budgets are being transacted versus others that are really into it and going, explain all this to me and tell me how it's all being distributed.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Your earlier question of, the value of a media agency, I think they're more valuable than ever. And I say that even through the lens of us in-housing performance marketing channels. So we use it's been a 13-year relationship. It is one based on genuine trust, collaboration, and there's so much IP in that business, on our business. And, we as a client try to motivate our agency partners to want to have their best talent work on our business, because we know as a challenger that's how you get the best outcomes. And so I think that probably 10% of my week would be media. it ebbs and flows. The topics that are more important to me are around measurement, audience strategy. I think a media plan should be in response to a customer strategy. So they're the topics with which I'm engaging with the media agencies on, with our MMM partners, with our brand. We use Kantar for brand tracking. We're having strategic high-level conversations, and then you empower the experts in the team to be executing efficiently in performance channels, or doing a great partnership media buy with Channel 7, for example.
Because one of the things that we always talk about here is like valuing an impression, right? Apples to oranges and all
Yep.
that sort of stuff. Does that reach you at all? Do you think of it and go, oh, you're squabbling over that, I don't give a shit? Like, do we talk about stuff and like obsess about things that don't matter?
Probably, particularly the further down the value chain, you go in our respective businesses, whether you're a client, a media agency, a publisher. I mean, I think I spent my first 10 years of my career working agency side, and it wasn't until I went into an in-house marketing role in the States when I realized that the CFO, the CEO, the CMO were not interested in cost per leads or reach and frequency numbers. Yes, that's important at a level, but that's not how you win hearts and minds in the boardroom. So I think that we as a broader community around advertising, I think, need to sharpen the commercial acumen pen. It's easier. We were having a conversation because we're a direct to consumer digital bank. I know where every single dollar of my marketing budget is going, and I can talk to the C-suite about the ROI on that. And it's taken, I've been at ING 6 years. It's taken a lot of time, various iterations of our frameworks and tooling to be able to do that. And we're by no means, nailing it. Like, there's still work we have to do. We talk a lot about volume. I'm trying to, we're talking a lot more about value. So it's not just we acquired X number of customers, or we've, sold X number of accounts or widgets or whatever it is. We should be looking at the 1, 3, 5 year value of that from a customer lens. And I'd love our agency partners, our media partners, to be kind of getting into bed with us to understand those commercial realities of what it's like driving growth in a business, to help us, bring really creative connection plans or properties, or whatever the sort of discussion point is.
Okay, but on that, just so we know precisely what you're talking about, both of you can answer this. When you're taking ideas to board level, what metrics, what data points do you actually need in order to shift the needle? Helen, you can start with that if you want.
Audience. So it's all about, for us, what shifts the needle. So what shifts the needle inside our organisation is that all parts of the business responsible for delivering audience outcomes are all aligned about what the mission is. So it's no accident that TV has some real positive momentum around it. I know from inside our business we have worked very hard with content and commercial and marketing and all parts to really be able to go into the C-suite together to say this needs to happen, and if we do this or we invest here, then we predict that audiences will be able to do this instead, which then obviously then helps the commercialisation story.
Okay, Danielle, what do you need from people in this room?
Return on marketing investment. And so I think, for us...
Problem with that metric. I hate that metric, by the way.
Okay.
It's the worst metric. Well, because I can give you great ROI by just reducing your ad spend, right? And that's a major problem for a lot of brands. So it's a difficult metric, that, don't you believe?
Yes, if that's how you're measuring it.
Right.
I think for us, it's the best metric to talk to executives around the genuine return on your investment, particularly when you apply a 5-year customer value lens to it.
Are you doing it over a five-year
Correct.
period of time?
Correct.
That probably makes a bit more sense than doing it over a short
I think you
term.
have to. And I think, look, it's difficult. I've worked in other businesses where you don't own your value chain. You don't own... I was at Samsung before this, and we didn't have line of sight on the end sales touch point. So talking to the C-suite about Romy was really different to working in a bank where, I can see the direct cause and sort of outcome from a campaign, the CPA, we're then able to sort of track that through customer value, what, the second, third product holding that the customer takes, what their loyalty is like, what's their on book, the deposits. Like, we're a bank, we have oodles of access to data. So I think we've had to really mature the marketing effectiveness agenda within the marketing department so that we're not the colouring in department.
Yeah.
Because too often we are that.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm so proud of our team, and by team I mean, agency village and partners. And even more broadly, other marketing peers. I think there's so much value in all of us coming together to talk about how we collectively, as a group function, can sort of elevate the impact of the work we do. Because to Amy's earlier point, we have to be taking more big bets on differentiation. All of our categories are becoming increasingly commoditized. Brand, experience, proposition is how we differentiate. And I think that is the role of the marketer, ultimately, at the end of the day. I genuinely think, I love that first, the panel from, blanking on our lovely two panelists' names, from YouTube. But, I genuinely think creativity is the last differentiator of growth. And collectively, everyone in this room, everything that we do should be sort of firing towards that outcome.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think a large part of it is how individual teams and individuals within an organisation are incentivised, right? If you're incentivised for short-term quarterly ROI, it is impossible to implement a big creative plan, because that's going to work over the long term. So if you don't mind me asking, how are you incentivised, and then how do you filter that through your team to incentivise them to ensure that the data and the dashboards don't lead to one story that gets them paid at the end of the month, but doesn't deliver for the brand in the medium and long term?
I think it's always a juggle. Short-term targets, we're on an annual sort of calendar year cycle. There are absolutely non-negotiable outcomes we have to reach year on year. There's obviously, sales. So my targets.
Your targets are quite mental.
My targets are quite broad. From financial, which would be profit, revenue, things like fee income, return on marketing investment. Financial box, customer, so NPS, brand equity, customer growth, active customer growth of each of our portfolios, right through to risk. We're a bank, that's a core requirement of our function, right through to people and leadership. So we've got quite a robust process of setting targets. It's the best I've actually ever seen in any organisation I've been, that sort of where we cascade those short and long-term targets throughout the business. And an example that's probably most relevant for this room would be my brand team. Their primary target is brand equity, but they would also be incentivised to drive a high customer value as well as NPS. Equally, the performance and sort of digital sales team would potentially take a product consideration target, and a customer value target as well. So that cascade is happening, and so it's not a long-term versus short-term or a sales versus brand dynamic, and that's an example of that cascade within marketing, and that happens more broadly across the risk department, product.
That sounds awfully complicated.
It takes a really long time.
Did you set all these incentives?
Yeah, God, yes.
Oh, it must have driven you bonkers.
I mean, that's why I spend 10%
on media.
On the media.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, the role of a CMO is I sit in Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
In forums and steercos much more than I do in a connections plan. And by God, I miss those days when like the best day of the week for me is sitting talking about something creative, because that's why you kind of get into this job.
Okay, that'll be your next question. How are you guys incentivized to ensure?
So I would say, truth be told, probably the way that we're going to be incentivized is evolving. Being a content business, we have forever lived by the overnight rating. That was sort of our ongoing barometer all year round. That's obviously evolving now as measurement and currency is changing as well. But I think we will absolutely start getting more scrutiny around how we're distributing our content differently, how we're thinking about the way that we're acquiring content, what is the total TV proposition, knowing that we have a streaming business inside our organisation. How do we think about windowing when we're acquiring new content? So what do people see for free versus what do they see behind a paywall? So I think we haven't actually finalised what that new world order looks like inside an organisation like ours. It's a very exciting project to be working on, but I think the way that we will be incentivised is absolutely going to change in, between now and coming back here in 12 months' time. I think expectations will be very different.
Okay. We're going to just have one question on AI. Got to ask you one question on AI. I don't ask a lot on it because most of it is nonsense at this point because we really don't know the impact of it quite yet. But the head of marketing of Coke Europe said AI will be the norm for ad creation. It saved them 90% of what they would have spent on their Christmas ad. Do you see that being the norm? Do you agree with that? That's coming?
I bloody hope so, because we spend a lot at the moment on sort of asset production.
Yeah.
So I think that you've got to find that healthy medium or mix between really effective, arresting, differentiated, simple, work that connects emotionally. I'm married to a creative director, so this is a hot topic for us, and the family budget's kind of predicated on, there still being a role for creatives, and I genuinely think that there is. We're experimenting really with the lower value work, the resizes, the heavy copy personalisation of the EDMs or the banners or those sort of things. We're experimenting with some AI film assets for Rory, who's our majestic lion and sort of distinctive brand asset that you would see in a lot of our assets. And if we can take more money and put it into working dollars as opposed to non-working production costs, that's a really great thing for the business in terms of those KPIs that we're trying to drive.
As long as they don't take it back.
Yeah, and as long as
That's
it's
the problem sometimes.
When you lose it to AI,
You lose it, or you got to make sure, hopefully, that the savings that you make don't just get injected back into the business, but actually get injected back into more marketing.
Well, that's where hopefully you can use an MMM or something to be able to say, if we put an extra X back into these channels, here's the outcome that we'll be able to drive.
Yeah.
this is the sad thing about creativity though, right? When you look at holding groups and agencies and where clients are putting money, we always hear creativity is key.
Yeah.
Everyone says it, right? You usually get that in the regional markets, not necessarily in the US. But the reality is there's actually a lot less money going to the creative agencies than there used to be. So where's the disconnect? Because we hear it all the time that it's key and it's apparently 50% of effectiveness is your creative, but we're actually putting less money. Like when you look at the whole market, less money going to that. Why is that happening? If it is that impactful, why are we not doing more of it?
So can I answer your first part of the question just around how Nine's approaching AI from a creative point of view?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
So I'd probably start with saying, like, we're not a Coke, we're not a can of Coke that you can buy on a shelf. So, you know, our business is built on creating great content that connects. I don't think that you can just shove that into an AI tool and it creates that same connection. Absolutely on, you know, kind of the iterative, creative work that goes on when we're creating different pieces of creative for every single episode, on multi-channels, on things that are probably lower value to us, then yes. But most of the examples I've seen are real, like, you know, tangible products that can just be in an AI world rather than finding the hooks in content that make you watch something and go, wow, I'm going to give up my time and explore that content further. Mm-hmm. In regards to the creative agency investment, we're a bit unique because we in-house our creative solutions. I think really interestingly, when speaking with creatives, more of them want to be making a heap of more TV ads. The problem is the marketers are not asking them to do that. So I think that's probably where the disconnect is that they're maybe not being given the budgets to probably go and do the big creative TVC work that they once got.
Well, all right, Danielle, you're not making enough good fancy TV ads.
No, we are. We spent plenty of money on that.
What is your view on the TV market and the narrative of supporting local TV and supporting Australian channels and all the rest of it? Does that matter to you? Are you actively engaged in it? Or is it just one of those things that go, oh, not this one again?
I mean, the short answer is yes, absolutely. And probably the best example is the partnership that we've done with Channel 7, which is an interesting platform or property that came to us 18 months ago by which sees ING as the official consumer finance sponsor of the Channel 7 News. So this is, I'm sort of going to answer both questions maybe through this example, hopefully. So basically what that means is 5 times a day, 5 days a week, we are broadcasting live from sunrise into the ING studio in our offices with ING talent who are basically talking to the Australian national population, that truly does run in sort of cap cities and regional, about macro finance, consumer finance topics, right through to really interesting nuggets on sort of money-related topics. So it might be everything from, this week it's been sort of breaking down Trump tariff madness and what that means to the bottom line of Australian families, right through to why the cost of beer is increasing. It's got something to do with hops, which will be connected to that earlier point, right through to how much Aussies are spending on sports fandom. And so the reason that we're trying to do that, it's much more of a push and pull strategy than just a push strategy of, running spots and dots all around Australia, telling everyone to sort of come to ING. And this is much more about, it comes back to our purpose and our brand strategy, which is about trying to empower more Australians to be financially engaged and empowered with their money. There's so much apathy in Australia around money. It's boring. Yeah. We don't want to talk about it. It's complex. So we're trying to break down the complexity, and we're trying to do that in a really unusual format, which is, with your morning coffee on sunrise right through to the evening news. And if, for us, the content play, is really how, if we can get in the family sort of barbecue conversation, and with really arresting content that feels really different from a bank.
And genuine. I've seen the sizzle. Totally. Yeah, we do have a sizzle, which we probably won't have time to play,
sure.
But it is something we'll share.
Watch Channel 7, you'll see us every morning, Matt Bowen. But I think what's interesting is that we're also then amplifying that content and that talent on podcasts, on, in your drive time TV, all those sorts of things. So
one big area that I thought for TV companies, you've got fantastic brands and studios, and I've known this from brands for years. Have been saying, use those assets and actually monetize it in a similar way you do. You go beyond dots and spots. I mean, from a marketing perspective, do you see any problems in that, involving brands in more of your content, to do more with your studios, with your talent?
No, we don't. I mean,
Are you doing enough of it now?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to think that we're making more content every day that brands can be integrated into. Mm-hmm. But as our proposition evolves, I think those openings will happen, and more brands will be able to do far more creative things. It will just keep evolving, and those revenue streams will just keep opening up for new opportunities.
Do you think that's honestly a proper revenue stream that TV companies could tap into and do a better job of it?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we have, if you think about the creator economy, someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was Sean, that 50% of new money will go into, we have them all over our building. We have talent and participants and sports stars, and that in itself is an opportunity for us to go, well, how do we leverage them more? How do we get them working with brands more effectively?
Could you see Nine do something like, how Miss Rachel is on Netflix? Could you get a creator on one of your channels? Are you looking at these things just to evolve?
Yeah, of course we're looking at everything.
Are you going to do it though?
All in good time. We'll see how things go. All
right, Danielle, last word. I know you're not embedded in media and stuff, but your view on where future of TV, that's the event. What's your sort of view on where Australia will sort of settle?
Look, I think it's exciting. I think that there's always, as long as TV networks and publishers produce great content, there will absolutely be an audience. I think advertisers will continue to want access to those audiences. We're going to want access to smart data and tooling to be able to prove the value of being in those environments, whether that's a spot and dot, or it's an integration into maths or Channel 7 News or whatnot. I think my provocation to the publishers and TV networks would be to disrupt themselves a little bit. Our experience, can be a little linear and a little siloed. The producers are not necessarily, thinking about the digital amplification or the social editorial opportunity. Think of it as the ecosystems with which you all own and the audiences with which you have the privilege of connecting with. And you know, that's what's been so powerful about the Channel 7 deal, and really pleased to sort of say that we're, you know, extending that, and we're seeing tremendous business value from a brand consideration, you know, right through to site visitation. So I've seen it being done firsthand. You know, I've seen that that's the result of, you know, media network agencies bringing that value to us. We could never have brokered that deal ourselves.
Yeah.
But you need a really strong team, you know, that I've got fortunately in-house to kind of look at how do we amplify this content more broadly, not just as a Channel 7 deal. You know, we're thinking about talent, connections, push-pull channels.
And your door is open for more ideas like this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
Well, on that note, let's join me in thanking my two panelists there. This has been fantastic and
Thank you.
insightful.